Mwah, ah, ah, ah.
Welcome, man, mer, and beast! Today, we will be exploring the Clockwork City. And no, this isn't going to be a 6 to 8 hour video on the lore, secrets, and theories about Clockwork City. No, today we're going to look at something a bit more surface level. We're going to look at how the Clockwork City, well, looks, the aesthetic of it, and how maybe it's not quite what it appears when you first look at it, and maybe not quite what we were expecting. This all came to me one day when I happened to be running through the Brass Fortress trying to kill a bunch of Skeevatons to get that achievement, and I stopped in the middle of the market and I said, why doesn't this look like Morrowind? Because indeed, although other areas of Clockwork City look like other areas of Tamriel, well, Clockwork City doesn't look like Morrowind. Morrowind is very distinctive. And although it's a dichotomy of different kinds of biomes, going from barren volcanic wasteland to, lush green grass with towering mushrooms, it's distinctive. You know you're in Morrowind when you see it, but when you're in Clockwork City, it doesn't look like Morrowind. There's no towering mushrooms. Even the architecture doesn't match. Flora and fauna don't seem to line up with what you'd expect. Early concept arts of Clockwork City have these things, but the actual in-game presence is nothing like Morrowind. And so that made me start to look. Well, if it doesn't look like Morrowind, what does it look like? I even took a peek at Vardenfall. Specifically, I went to the ruins of Ald Sutha, where Suthasil was born, and nothing around there looks like Clockwork City. So, what does it look like? Well, first, let's take a peek at Clockwork City. It's brass, hence the name, metallic, sort of steampunk-like, but let's take a close look at particularly the plants. The architecture is one thing, but the plants is what really gives us a key into what this may be modeled after. And in doing so, hopefully, we'll be able to take a peek and see where else on Tamriel this sort of reminds us of. Let's start with these trees over here. Those are cherry blossom trees. I certainly don't think that's very Morrowind-esque. Yes, it's all metal replication, but they're undeniably cherry blossoms. Very, very strange when you think about it. The rocks also are very distinct with striations, layers. It's intriguing. Then we have even things like grass and bushes. This doesn't look like Morrowind. This is distinctive, it's green, and although it's all metal, well, it's still different. So as we walk through, you can even see that the streets just kind of wind intriguingly. Morrowind cities don't usually look this way, they're not laid out in such a pattern. And in fact, even on the map, if you look at Clockwork City, specifically the Brass Fortress, the layout's very unique as well. So, what does it look like? Where else in Tamriel has this kind of look? Well, there is one place, and it came out in a DLC after Clockwork City, and kind of makes a little bit of sense. Artaeum, home of the Sigic Order. That might seem surprising, considering, well, they're very different. This area is organic, it's lush, it's magical. I mean, just look at the sky, that's not normal. But it makes a certain sort of sense. First, let's look and see what looks the same. Even the architecture, although different, the towering spires kind of remind me of the towering spires in the Brass Fortress. But moreover, it's the plants. Again, that's the key. As we run through Artaeum, it's very lively, it's full of life. There's animals, there's plants. It's colorful, which the Brass City maybe doesn't look like it would be at first glance. But if you look a little deeper, you'll start to notice, well, the plants kind of look similar. And yes, that could just be assets being reused, but consider the fact that for the Brass Fortress, they had to retexture everything to look metallic. It's not just a copy and paste. This was intentional, I think. You can see these bushes, little bit look alike there. Even the way that Artaeum is laid out is a little bit reminiscent of Clockwork City, and that could just be me looking, really closely at things, but it's interesting. So let's take a closer look at some of the plants. Specifically, cherry blossoms. Again, these are very much a Somerset staple. This here looks very much like the one in Clockwork City. And yes, the bark is organic instead of brass, and the flowers are slightly different color, but you can definitely see the similarities. You can even see similarities with the grasses, and even some of the rocks look, well, almost the same. Different textures, different coloring, but there's definitely something here. It's not as surprising as you might think, considering Artaeum and Suthisil's history. So, yes, he built the Clockwork City, and yes, he is a Dunmer, but lore tells us that actually he was most at home on Artaeum. The book series Truth and Sequence from ESO and the book series from multiple games, 2920, the last year of the First Era, one of my favorites, both talk about how Suthisil not only is an honorary Stygic, but that he actually loved teaching on Artaeum, and that was where he felt at home. Truth and Sequence even mentions that he hoped they would come to Clockwork City with him. This makes me think that, despite the fact that he was very active in Morrowind's history, I think he really actually felt most at home on Artaeum, and I think that's why the Brass Fortress looks so much like it. So, what do you guys think? Let me know. Do you think I'm out of my mind? Am I just seeing things that aren't there? Who can say? But what fun is Elder Scrolls if we don't take a closer look, maybe too close, at all the little details? Thanks so much for joining me, and I hope to catch you next time we do one of these little fun exploration videos. As an end note, it makes me laugh that Clockwork City has very few stairs. It's all ramps and elevators. It's as if Suthisil came to visit Vivek one day and saw that and was like, nah, we're not going to do that in Clockwork City. Let's just do ramps and elevators instead.